Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Mathyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Okay, let's do a quick revision of the values which we have already gone through. We have started with ahimsa. This is whereby we have deliberate. Deliberate means mindful. Deliberate means intentional. Deliberate means conscious. Deliberate means slow enough so that I'm able to capture what? Deliberate thought, deliberate word, and deliberate action. So this means we can create an exercise out of this. How so? We can, for example, say, what area is the easiest one for me to work with, depending upon the career or the place that you find yourself in. Suppose you're in a career of speaking, then you can choose word. If you're in a career of thinking, then you can choose thought. If you're in the career of doing various actions like community service, then you can choose actions. So you say for one day, today I will practice or put extra deliberation, extra mindfulness or conscious thoughtfulness into my, suppose, words. And I'm going to be extra sensitive to what comes out of these lips for one whole day. Whoever's around you, that's a bonus because you obviously need someone around you to practice your conscious word lip exercise. And then after you get some confidence, you can say, well, I have succeeded being mindful for one day, right? So now I have confidence to do 2 days. So then you say Thursday and Friday, right? I'm going to be super conscious of how these lips open, which direction they move, and what tone comes out of this voice, how high it gets raised, how low it stays, for how long. So you can become super deliberate about what's coming out of your voice box. And then when you get more confidence, then you say, great, let's ramp this up to 1 week. Don't go overboard, not like 1 year, right? Because usually we have these big goals. So just 1 week. And then you put maybe some printer, put how is your word? Are you watching your words? So you put that in front of your monitor or your office, and just to remind you, because we usually forget and then we go into our usual habits, right? So, and how much to practice this? Only as slow or as much as you're able to capture every one of those details. Because what happens is we usually do things on autopilot. And because of that, it slips through our radar screen. Therefore, we miss it. And then later on, we regret only those parts that slip through our radar screen. Therefore, slow down only as much as you're able to consciously hear yourself speaking. So therefore, this converts our unconscious automatic autopilot program that loves to run 95% of the time into a more of a conscious, capture-worthy experience. Capture-worthy means you're capturing what this body, what this vehicle assigned to you, the individual, is speaking or thinking. Okay, so you must catch every one of them. Is that cool? Exercise. Cool, so we can, something to do, right? Okay. Then comes kshantihi, accommodation of or acceptance of choiceless situations. What happens often is we come to a situation and we're unable to accept it the way that it is. So then we put resistance or friction against it. And to put friction against things actually only minimizes your own clarity, your own thinking power, only because I am unable to accept the way things are, especially those things that we have no choices around, like our past. Can we do something about our past? About where you've grown up, how you've grown up, who's been around you, what education you got? Absolutely not. So what is kshantihi in reference to the past? It is saying that I, as an individual, have gone through certain events and teachers and so on, and spiritual paths. Here I am right now. What do I do with what I've got right now? And how do I make the best ability out of what is available to me now? Therefore, you're accepting what is with this kshanti accommodating attitude, which comes in 2 types. The first one is a healthy acceptance. The second one is an unhealthy acceptance. So what is a healthy type of kshantihi glad acceptance. It is saying, right now, I'm allowing this choiceless activity is present, no doubt. It's in front of me, it's facing me. And it's choices. That means I didn't choose to put it in front of me, but it's in front of me nevertheless. So what is a healthy, accommodating attitude towards that? It is saying, I'm not going to let this overpower me. I'm not going to get lost about what has happened, because who and what is your best friend? Your rational thinking capacity. The moment our best friend leaves us, that means when we get caught up, enmeshed, invested into what is happening in front of us, we just lost the only friend that is there to help us move us in the most smoothest, joyful possible fashion that we can hope for. So who's your best friend from now on? Your own thinking capacity, your own mind. Not even your puppy, even though puppies come close, but it is the rational capacity. Therefore, protect and preserve and prioritize the capacity of your clarity at all times. How to do that? By refusing to get overpowered by those situations that seem overwhelming for us to handle. Last week, we spoke about how to handle those overwhelming situations. One of them is to break them down into chunks. If you're programming, if you're designing something, if you're construction or any kind of work, you know that the easiest way to accomplish anything is by breaking it down into a manageable section that you're able to get involved with, and then you're able to move forward, and then therefore get the whole synergy working together. One of the key aspects to a healthy acceptance is patience, because we sometimes keep on accommodating and we keep on being generous and we keep on giving. And what happens? No results, right? You're like, oh boy, can I, as a human being, I want some results, please, some rewards. It would be highly appreciated, but nothing's coming. So we need high level of patience and understanding that no giving can go ungiven. In other words, the way the system is built is whatever you give, whatever you accommodate, by your attitude towards it, you will receive indeed the fruits of that in the future. It's just a matter of infinite patience. So actually, let's forget about infinite patience. So let me look more direct. Can you be patient? Suppose that the rewards of all of your actions are only going to come in the last year before you die. Can you be that patient? Yeah, so this means we have some patience to work on. So this means the more you're able to understand that no thing can go ungiven, in other words, that everything is always given to whatever you have done in the past, the stronger you know that, the more firm you know that, the more you're able to be patient and not have this sense of, I want results now. So again, can you be patient? Suppose, 80 or 90, when you're broken and don't even remember your name, only then all of the fruits of your life are coming there. That might as well be the case. So we require that kind of patience. So you might as well just say to yourself now, can I be this patient? If not, why not? What am I expecting right now to happen? What don't I have right now that is not good enough? What is missing right now? I've got air to breathe, I've got food, I've got shelter. What more do I want? So patience is something that we all need to work on. Just an example, a parent, for example, is highly patient towards a toddler. For example, you ask a toddler, hold the bottle, and then they drop the bottle. Something so simple like holding a bottle, right? And it's your maybe grandmother's face or something. So, but the mom or dad, they don't get angry. In other words, they have patience, knowing that the child only has sufficient capacity to be able to handle this much. So, in other words, through their understanding that everyone is as though a child in an adult body learning. So we, through that understanding, can develop patience for us also giving and learning and trying to understand and grasp this knowledge and have these effects actually take place. Because I know how it is sometimes, right? Man, I've been listening to this for so long and the results not happening. I want faster results. This is where we need patience, right? So everyone is like this. It's not just you. We're all probably going at some moment or the other. I want results to happen faster. But the reality is, it's not really like that, right? You can, but it's superficial. But that real depth comes through time. The unhealthy accommodation attitude is whereby you say, what cannot be cured has to be endured, right? That's healthy version also. What cannot be cured has to be endured. But how do you endure it? With bitterness. Yeah, it's no problem. I can accept it. But underneath, there's anger. There's bitterness towards the world and bitterness towards God. But on the outside, I can accept this. So this is the unhealthy attitude. And usually this grows and builds up and bubbles up and turns into a psychological complication. Then eventually we take it out onto someone. Okay. Next one is arjavam. So first of all, ahimsa, then kshantihi, then arjavam. Arjavan, just think of ar, like arrow, straight. So in other words, straightforwardness. In other words, arjavam is an agreement between thought, word, and action. That means they're all friends. They're all in a little house, openly sharing what they're doing. None of them are hiding in different rooms and going, and someone's watching, something on the computer, or someone else is planning something else. They're all in total friendship. So therefore, when you call someone a trustworthy person and you say, you're a loyal person, suppose I say to you, you're a loyal person, you're a trustworthy person, you're the type of person that I can depend on, that I can rely upon. Has anyone ever told you that? Or you've told that to someone else? What did you really mean by that? What do we really mean when we say you're a loyal person? You're a trustworthy person. I can rely upon you. I can depend upon you. What do we mean by that?
So the person is accountable. Does, when you ask something, you ask them to do something, they will do it.
Excellent. So in other words, excellent, Göknur. So Göknur is saying through the course, and not just once, right? But over and over again. In other words, that through the course of time, what they said and how they followed up, there was a consistency between them. There was no big gaps. Now, let's get something straight. There will always be a little bit of a gap because nobody can be 100% accountable every single time, even though it is inconvenient for some of us. But the amount of gaps is short between what they say and what they do. In other words, there's a consistency. And through the course of that, I now say, okay, since you have always followed up on what you said, I can trust you. You're a trustworthy person. Now, what's the opposite of arjavan? What's the absence of arjavan? For example, this is where our words, our thoughts, and our actions are not aligned. Suppose you say, tomorrow, I'm going to go to bed early tonight. And I'm going to wake up tomorrow early, 6 a.m. And then you wake up at 9, 10 o'clock. In other words, you miss the mark by hours. That's one example. Tomorrow, I'm going to study all day. I'm going to finish this project. It's been delayed all day. Tomorrow comes 30 minutes. See the gap? All day versus 30 minutes. And we just say small statements, innocent statements like this, and it becomes normal to speak like this. All day, 30 minutes. Where's the connection? Or I'll come on Tuesday, on Wednesday or Thursday, and your client tells you that through email, and they don't show up. You'll be surprised. Often, when people ask me, when you come on Tuesday, new folks, then I say, absolutely, I'll look forward to seeing you. 50% don't show up. So it happens even in Vedanta. I'll be finished in 15 minutes. But then you finish in 30 minutes. Something that I should work on. Yeah, it's kind of hard to end it at 8 o'clock. Okay, how about your dress looks really pretty? What do you mean by that? What looks pretty? Okay. In other words, you're not being straightforward, because if you were straightforward, you'll be able to reply immediately upon my question. I'm not mad. Why would I be mad? See the gap? My tone doesn't match my words. Therefore, my thinking doesn't match my words, nor all three of them are out of alignment. hey, don't worry, everything will be just fine. What will be just fine? How do you know? Well, I don't know. So in fact, you don't know that everything will be fine, and yet you're telling me that everything will be fine. Again, there's a gap between my thoughts and my words. So this is the absence of arjavam. Why am I pointing this out? Because innocent statements like this in relationships that we say to each other, they're almost cute and innocent. But in reality, underneath, it's showing this absence of arjavam, which is a highly crucial quality for the sake of that trustworthiness towards yourself, but also just a sense of loyalty. So that was a revision. Let's move on to value 6, acharyopasanam, service to the teacher, value 6.
Akaryopasana, it's a very important value for a student. The word akarya means one who himself understands and makes others understand or follow. Suppose the teacher says that anger is an enemy to you, and yet he himself gets angry. Then what he says would not carry weight with the student. He must understand what the Shruti says and follow through behavior, so that not only by his words, but by example, he makes others understand and follow. During his period of study, the student resides with the teacher, and as an expression of gratitude for the knowledge he is receiving, serves his teacher. This living in the family of the guru implies necessarily sharing whatever work that is there to be done. Let us see why this is a value. The Shruti is the Pramana, and between the Shruti and the student who wants to understand the Shruti is the teacher. He conveys the meaning of Shruti sentence according to a well-established methodology, Sampradaya, and without him, the Shruti cannot be properly understood. In fact, it is said that Jnana without the Guru is never adequate for moksha, because it's not the Shruti that conveys, but the Sampradaya. Without it, the sentence of Shruti would seem contradictory, and the words have to come from a person who sees what he talks. Then alone do they convey the meaning with such a clarity that both the person and the words disappear. The meaning alone remains. While reading a book, however, you are operating the intellect as an agent, karta, yet it is this very karta that has to be sublated by knowledge.
In the operation of Shruti Pramana, you are not the karta or even the listener. It operates like the eyes. If they are open and there is adequate light in an object without any will or sense of individuality, you will see the object. There is only the pramana and the object. Will does not enter into it. All the senses operate similarly, and even in the inference, once the invariable concomitance is there, the conclusion takes place immediately. If you go outside and find water everywhere, you understand at once that it has rained. This is how a means of knowledge operates. Shruti is also pramana, but it does not really convey unless it is handled by someone who knows the sampradaya.
What is acharyopasanam? So these are two words, acharyaha and upasanam. Upasana means meditation upon the acharya, and the acharya here represents the shruti, the knowledge. So what is acharyopasanam? It is worship or reverence towards the teacher. And why would you want to worship or have reverence towards any kind of teacher? Because you value their specialized skills. It's like this in anything. If you're in physics or any kind of work that is requiring special skills, then that person that you're relating to, they are your key to incorporating the bigger, larger vision of whatever it is that you're studying. So it's not just in Vedanta like this, it's everywhere. And this specialized skill matters to you. It doesn't matter to someone else, but to you it matters. And for that reason, that teacher to you is someone that is worthy of worship. It may not be worthy of worship for someone else, but it is to you only because you value that specific skill. It's also noteworthy of saying that this worship towards the acharya doesn't go necessarily towards the acharya or the guru. The reason is because even the guru or the acharya is also limited. They also have limited knowledge and limited power, just like anyone else. Only Ishvara alone is limitless in knowledge and power. However, the acharya nonetheless represents the knowledge which you are seeking, or symbolizes with clarity that knowledge which you find valuable or important. Therefore, any namaskara, any prostrations to the acharya or to the guru is actually prostrations to the knowledge in the Shastra, which you are trying to understand with depth. You're trying to incorporate into your own life. So the question now is, why should I worship the Shastra through the Acharya? Why? Because the scriptures are like a sixth sense, as the book is saying, using the eyes example. It's like a sixth sense. And it means that the Shastra, being the sixth sense, contains knowledge which is imperceptible through your other sense organs. For example, every sense organ reveals a fact. It reveals a reality. What do your eyes reveal? It reveals the reality of form, of color. What do your ears reveal? Your ears reveal the reality or the presence or the fact of sound. Now, can the eyes reveal the sound, and can the ears reveal the sight? No. In other words, in order to reveal a certain reality, you need an appropriate sense organ. You need an appropriate instrument specifically designed or made to detect or to validate that fact that is already true right now. So this means that the eyes can neither prove nor disprove sound, and ears can neither prove nor disprove sight. Even if you're listening to a blind man trying to prove sight, are you going to listen? Probably, but what do you know about that? Suppose a blind man is showing you how there is presence of color. Where are they speaking from? Are they speaking from experience, or are they speaking from mere intellectual descriptions memorized or heard somewhere else? Mere intellectual descriptions. In other words, they're not speaking from direct experience. So therefore, I would rather go to someone with open eyes, whose eyes are working, who can tell me and teach me about the presence of colors and contours and lines in nature and the shadings and all sorts of sight worthy topics to learn about. So neither can give knowledge of the other. You need an individual sense organ in order to reveal a specific reality. So what does this mean in terms of Shastra? Why should I worship the Shastra? Because just like you worship your eyes, in other words, you depend on your eyes to reveal the fact of sight, we worship or depend upon the Shastra to reveal the fact of the self, the presence behind the perceptions, the fact of the presence that is behind the perceiver. So in other words, we need that instrument called the Shastra to reveal that ever-present fact, which is yourself. In other words, the reality behind the relative person. And then the book says about Shraddha. So with what attitude should the Acharya or the Shastra be worshipped or revered? And that is the attitude of Shraddha. That means, what is Shraddha? It means putting a temporary trust, a provisional trust into a means of knowledge, and long enough until I discover that fact for myself. In other words, you need to put a temporary trust into the Shastra long enough until you going through the methodology which the Shastra is revealing, discovering the reality for yourself. Once you discover the reality for yourself, then Shraddha has done its job. Now you no longer need faith because it was just another tool helping you long enough to accept a certain reality. In fact, if you go to a new job, suppose, and the colleague is assigned to train you, you have no choice but to worship them and their knowledge, because they are your key to staying in that occupation. And you put your temporary trust in them long enough until you're capable of taking on and becoming an independent human being in the light of the knowledge which they have trained you, because of your own shraddha being put into their work. That is also accounting your thoughtfulness throughout your training. It's not like you just accepted it blindly, but you also thought about what you have been trained. And then what is the ideal relationship between the teacher and the student? Because we often have this idea of what's this ideal perfect relationship? What is this Guru Shishya Parampara supposed to be like? You know, is a guru supposed to be sitting up there and a student down there? Or what's going on here? Because the mind loves to create fantasies, right? The answer is there is no answer. There is no specific one definitive, absolute, right, side that if it's there, that is it. That's the perfect relationship. It evolves, just like a relationship with you and your friend, or with you and your spouse, or with you and anyone. It evolves through time. It goes through phases. Sometimes you're farther apart, sometimes you're closer. That's just the nature of human beings. Therefore, we have to be realistic about any kind of relationship, including the Guru Shishya, which is nothing but a evolution of the relationship between the two individuals who are communicating for a change to take place. What happens if the person is unable to develop this relationship? Suppose the person says, yeah, it is there, the teacher's there, but I don't quite feel close to them. Is this normal? Is it supposed to be like this? Am I supposed to feel close? And how close am I supposed to feel? How do you explain this? Is there any kind of indicators? Again, there's no specific indicators. Sometimes the teacher can have not a close relationship to you at all, and yet you still learn through their knowledge alone. For others, we desire a close relationship, and that also helps us to assimilate the knowledge. So there's no specific indicator in terms of I'm supposed to be one-on-one, I'm supposed to be there physically all the time with them, or distant away. Whatever takes place for you, however learning or knowledge takes place for you, is your method. The teacher is just there offering themselves, so it is up to you to assertively ask for a method that is meaningful to you through the course of time. Because sometimes we start off and we say, well, they are speaking, they are teaching me, but I'm not connecting, right? I'm not connecting to the teaching nor to the teacher. So again, is this normal? Am I supposed to connect? The answer is, the more you spend time, like with anyone, what happens? The more you get comfortable with them. That means the more you open yourself up, and the teacher also opens themselves up to you specifically. And that requires time, does it not? So in other words, again, we need patience. We need a certain level of trust to stay. Now, unfortunately, today, what happens is some of us are trained to just look up a YouTube video, instant gratification, and this instant gratification then carries over into classes, into physical events, and the person is just unable to stay long enough to develop some proper, meaningful rapport with another human being. And therefore, that in itself ends up being a sabotaging endeavor. So the person then moves on to something else with this fantasy that I'm supposed to connect immediately. It's supposed to be love at first sight. And if it's not a love at first sight, that is not my teacher. So all of these components are then involved, and either helping the person, but in most cases also sabotaging the person, because we carry this fantasy of how it's supposed to look like. Suppose that a person couldn't find themselves to trust their mom and dad, because the mom and dad were always having a different opinion. One said one thing, the other said the other thing. And so the kid, as a child, decided, I cannot quite trust who's right or wrong. Now, what happens in adulthood is they carry this inability to decide who should I listen to. And therefore, no matter which person comes to them, they're simply unwilling to or unable to accept or to decide who should I listen to. Why? Because it is traced back into our childhood. So in other words, this is another thing that we need to overcome. This is why we say Vedanta requires so many qualifications on a part of the student in order to actually just stay and listen. Another component that may sabotage the listening experience is taking the present teaching and then trying to fit it with what we've heard in the past. This is very common because sometimes, we have these authoritative figures in the past, which are generally authoritative. And then we try to, because, when something's in your mind for a longer time, it has more priority than the new information. Therefore, we take what has higher priority and then we try to put the new information into the older framework, and it doesn't sometimes work. So this means we need to have an open mind in the space of, or in the atmosphere of Shraddha. That means I'm willing to put aside my notions long enough just to capture this new information. In Buddhism, we call this the beginner's mind. In other words, I have a beginner's mind as if I'm listening for the first time ever, as if I've never been before in spirituality in my life. Just like a child. That's why children learn so fast, because they're not bringing so many notions from the past and saying, no, I can go on, move on. I've heard this before. You're saying this over and over again. They don't have that. So in other words, they're just sucking it all in because it is a beginner's fresh mind now. And an adult is no different. Adult fully has the capacity to also be in a state of beginner's mind just by choosing, just by saying, today I wish to have a beginner's mind. Today I wish to be like a sponge. Just a matter of affirmation. Self-affirmation is good enough. Or at least it's a starting point. Also, when it comes to the attraction between who's teacher and student and teacher, when it comes to that, like with anything, like attracts like. Two magnets coming together. Why? Because there's a certain resonance between the mentality of the teacher and the mentality of the student. Therefore, for example, sometimes some students prefer short bursts of one-liners, like those short, kind of like Tao Te Ching, for example, just those who speak don't know, a lot of knowledge there. And it doesn't mean that the person's shallow. It just means that I don't need you to explain, because I will take one liner that makes sense and then I will go off and think of it myself. I will think of the depth within it by myself. Therefore, don't give me the details. Just give me some wise one-liner that I will accept provisionally with faith, and then I will think of it myself. What is the real meaning of it? The other preference is those who prefer details. They want more depth into the teaching. The kind of mentality that you have is the kind of teacher that you will naturally attract. However, there is a danger point with one-liners. Through the course of time, they can turn into generalizations. For example, do actions without expecting results. And I just walk away. What is the true meaning of this? This is a little test for you.
It's the karma yoga attitude. You can't expect things to be the way, because that's just not the way it works. You won't get everything you expect.
Indeed.
And if you do expect it, then you're going to get mental hang-ups and sadness, angry, all these problems.
How about detach from the world?
Detach from likes and dislikes.
Let go of your need to rely on your likes and dislikes. Can you detach yourself? No. All right, you can't detach yourself because your entire existence on earth depends on people, depends on food, depends on air, depends on resources. Even the clothes you're wearing, feeling so warm, saying, oh, I'm so detached from the world. You're only saying that because you feel warm because of the people that have made your clothes. If you're not involved in the world, then you don't have the chance to exercise compassion. And compassion is an important quality that can only be developed how? By interfacing with other people, by being put in challenges whereby you're now expected to demonstrate how well you've been taught. So therefore, detaching only ends up being a non-learning experience for the person who has chosen to detach. How about when it comes to Atma, it's a matter of experience. You got to experience it. How about this? Where is the point of truth? It has to be an experience. And also, where's the point of danger in saying it has to be an experience?
It's you're trying to say it's beyond the mind, it's beyond actual word knowledge. But then you can misconstrue it by learning an experience and misconstruing a particular experience as being Atma when it's beyond that. It's not book knowledge.
So we can see how one statement can have two connotations. If the teacher doesn't mention both of them, then the person is going to selectively, on the basis of their likes and dislikes, going to choose one, whichever one sounds better. So from the aspect of it's an experience, yes, that is true. That has, it has to be a simulated, firm reality. But at the same time, how can you experience what you already are? Awareness shining on an ignorant mind. The mind saying, I don't know who I am. That same awareness is also shining on a knowledgeable mind who is saying, or which is saying, I know who I am. Where's the matter of experience there? You, the awareness, were shining on an ignorant mind. You, the awareness, are still shining on a knowledgeable mind. Where's the question of experience there? You are never not experiencing yourself. Awareness is always available to you. Your whole life is just being awareing experiences left and right. I don't know, I know. I don't know, I know. But the one in whose presence there is knowledge and there is ignorance known, that person is always true. So in other words, the seeker is always experiencing the sought. Finally, how do we know if the acharya's knowledge is intellectual or assimilated? How do we know? There are two indicators. The first one is they have to be decently knowledgeable in the Shastra. Just like with any work or any subject matter, you don't want to learn from a teacher who hasn't actually gone into the Shastra, because they're actually the key to explaining the methodology. The second is they have to be firm in that knowledge themselves. Now, the first one's quite easy because you just need to expound a few lines here and there and connect the dots and say, okay, they know their stuff. But the second one is much harder to know, isn't it? Especially someone who hasn't assimilated the knowledge yet, because how would you know? How would you know that the person that I'm listening to right now is speaking from an intellectual standpoint and they believe they got it, or from a firm standpoint where there's actualized reality without a shadow of a doubt? How would you know?
Whatever you ask, whatever question you are seeking for, they have a consistent response. Actually, it might come from Shastra knowledge as well. So that's the only way I can think of.
Good.
There's
So
always consistency, and they all builds upon each other.
So in other words, the layer upon layer, every statement actually connects in itself. They're non-contradictory statements, and they also support the Shastra. Victor?
I was just going to make a joke, Andre, and say it depends on what they're wearing.
No. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, that's the beginner like indicator, right? Be Indian, they have to, if they're Western, forget about it.
Long beard.
They have to be old, right? They have to be, kind of a really firm and hardly move, just slow and all that. So these are small indicators there. One of them is they can answer questions, just like with any topic. You need to be able to answer questions. They decently make sense. The other one is they're able to expound big, complex things into simple terms. For example, one of the physicists said to Einstein, showed him a formula, because I think they were doing some theory of relativity equations there. And Einstein looked at the formula and said, no, this cannot be the truth. Why not? Because it is too complex. In other words, the more complex something is, the farther away it is from the essence of the truth. The more simpler the person can turn something huge into something that's understandable by a 5-year-old, or maybe by a 10-year-old, right? I don't know what a 5-year-old is going to understand this. Then the more they are in themselves firm in this knowledge, because we get it. Explaining things in a complex manner sounds very intriguing, and it's like, wow, they know so much. But does that make you relate to them, or does that kind of, make them up there and you're like down there? So in other words, the ability to relate on an equal level plus expound big concepts into simple, relatable terms is also another good trait for a teacher. The other one is they focus on the methodology instead of, or implying, this is about me, this is about what I've done, about my powers, about what I've gone through. In other words, they give the impression that this is more about the Shastra, the knowledge itself, and not about the person who's actually teaching it. And the other one is, one of my favorites is look up who is the teacher's guru. This is the first thing that I've done when my first teacher, James, showed up. He kept on talking about Chinmayananda. I was like, Chinmayananda, who's Paramarthananda, Chinmayananda, Dayananda? I was like, okay, let me look up who are they? Because I want to know where they come from. What are they teaching? In that case, I can have more reassurance that what my teacher is teaching me is firm. So in other words, these are just indicators that we can, kind of reassure ourselves. And finally, what is the ideal attitude for both the teacher and the student to have while the teaching is taking place? The ideal attitude is, when it comes to Shastra specifically, I am not a possessor or an owner of this knowledge. We are both mere carriers of this knowledge. Nobody possesses or owns anything. We just borrow and we carry this for teaching our own generation, for the next generation to come. So we are mere servants of Bhagavan's laws and orders as the ones who passing on this to the next generation. So in other words, the center is always God alone throughout all times. All I'm attaining here, all I am attempting to attain and reconcile is my oneness with the whole. That is all. So in other words, we keep Ishvara in minds at all times. Also, when it comes to how to improve or increase the effectiveness of assimilating this knowledge, and this, by the way, can apply in any kind of subject area, the question is, how do you make the teaching much more effective? There's two ways. One of them is just to listen, take notes. That's good enough. That's much better than just listening, right? The other way is, after you've taken notes, you ask 3 specific questions, and this can be applied in any area. The first one is, how will I use this? How will I use this? Having gone through this teaching today, how will I use this in my life? How can I use this? So in other words, you're now engaging your mind and making it relevant to you personally. If you don't make a teaching relevant, it will likely 90% plus chance be forgotten. The second question that you can ask is, why must I use this? Why is this a must? If it's not a must, forget about it. It will be forgotten. In other words, we need a strong reason in order to do anything. Reasons reap results. If there's no reason, then results cannot be reaped, because life will take over and it will just forget about the teaching. Do you ever wonder why we forget names? Because we have no reason to remember another person's name. If a president says his name or her name to you, you will remember it, because it is in it for you. It is a strong reason why I should remember it. So in other words, by having a reason, it increases the efficiency and the effectiveness of the teaching by 2-fold at least. Why must I use this? So that is your job tonight. After having listened to this, ask, why must I use this in my life? You create the reasons for that. And finally, when will I use this? When specifically will I use this? Take a moment, imagine at work, okay, how can I see myself using this now? Maybe tomorrow morning I will apply it with whomever is around me. When will I use this? So think of a situation or imagine a situation, applying the knowledge. Okay, so now let's summarize the values so far. Value 1, amanitvam. Repeat, amanitvam, humility. Value 2, adambhitvam. Adambhitvam, absence of pretense. Value 3, ahimsa, non-injury. Value 4, kshantihi, accommodation. Value 5, arjavam, straightforwardness. Value 6, acharyopasanam, service to the teacher. Value 7, which is shaucham. Shaucham is inner and outer purity. This is an important one because this is all about how to purify our minds.
Shaucham is cleanliness in a 2-fold sense. Bahya Shaucha, external cleanliness, and Antara Shaucha, inner cleanliness. Antara Shaucha is less well organized. Antara Shaucha means cleanliness of the Antakarana, mind. What is a Shaucha? Uncleanliness of the mind. What makes a mind unclean? Jealousy, anger, hatred, fear, selfishness, self-condemnation, guilt, pride, possessiveness, all these emotions and the climate of despair and resentment which come in their wake, or all other unclean qualities of the mind. Every day while I go about my business, dust settles on my skin, dirt smudges on my clothes, my desk becomes littered, and in my transactions with people and circumstances, my mind gathers daily a shaucha. Linked to my likes and dislikes, ragas and dveshas, smudges of envy settle. A spot of exasperation lands. Streaks of possessiveness appear. And overall, the fine dust of self-criticism, guilt, and self-condemnation spreads in my mind.
Each day I wash my body, launder my clothes, and straighten my desk. It is a day-to-day affair until death. Until my body goes, I must do this. It is the same with the mind. Each day until, in the knowledge of the self, my false identification with the mind goes. My mind must be cleaned. When there is no daily cleaning outside or inside, the accumulation makes the task much more difficult. Pratipaksha Bhavana attitude to cleanse the mind. How can we clean the mind? What is the detergent for the mind? Is it Pratipaksha Bhavana? Prati, a Sanskrit prefix, means opposite. Paksha stands for position or point of view. Bhavana indicates thinking or state of thought. Thus, Pratipaksha Bhavana means a state of mind with the opposite point of view. The practice of Pratipaksha Bhavana is to take deliberately the opposite point of view by an act of will to think the opposite of the unclean thoughts.
Thank you, David.
I undertake this opposite thinking and act accordingly, even though I feel that my attitude is justified. Someone may do an improper action that insults or injures me. Resentment settles in my mind. The action may have been inarguably improper, but the resentment nonetheless is mine. It is asaucha of my mind. If I allow it to remain, the resentment can build up into hatred, a painful, disturbing mental state. When I see, therefore, the personal consequence of allowing asaucha to remain when the object of resentment comes to my attention, I deliberately use my will to think of thoughts opposite to the negative ones that first come to mind. When I see a person I resent or dislike, not disliked by everyone, then I deliberately search for the reason why others like him. I think of the positive facts that I know of the person, that he is kind to his children, that he cares for his parents, that he gives to charity, and so on. I call to mind the good things I know of him. When I look into any person, I will find love. I'm capable of loving. Any person is capable of loving.
Even a person given to crime has within him the elements of love and sympathy. It may be that the criminal's capacity for love is so obscured that it only manifests itself in the sympathy he shows to himself when he accidentally bangs his thumb with a hammer, but it is there to be discovered. Manifest or not, everyone has the qualities of compassion, mercy, love, not hurting, and so on that makes one a saint. Therefore, to cleanse the mind of resentment and dislikes that solidify into hatred, I deliberately search for those things in another person that indicate his humanness, his saintliness. They are there in everyone. When you focus only on the glimpses of saintliness in another person, all the other traits you have observed in him are attributed merely to error, mistake, habit, wrong thinking, wrong environment, and wrong upbringing. You take it as your blessing that you are not in the same position that he is in. With the same parentage, the same environment, your own behavior would be what you object to in him. You see behind the acts the person possessed of all the saintly qualities, because innately these qualities are the human qualities. Saintly qualities are the qualities of the self, the qualities that really constitute human nature. The opposite qualities are incidental, they come and go.
Self-condemnation can be controlled by pratipaksha bhavana, by refusing to condemn myself while at the same time deliberately thinking non-self-condemned thoughts. Analysis of the nature of self-condemnation will help me exercise pratipaksha bhavana. On analysis, I will always find that in this body-mind package, which I term I, the body that carries out the act cannot be condemned. The hands, the legs, the feet, the tongue, and all the other parts of the body are in a jada. The body itself lacks self-consciousness or independent will. Similarly, the senses and the various functions of the body are not independent conscious processes, performing their jobs indiscriminately, either automatically or upon direction from the mind. They cannot be held culpable. Neither can the mind be labeled the culprit. The mind is not a simple definable entity, but is an ever-changing aggregate of thoughts in motion, some beautiful, some not beautiful, and some useful, and some inconsequential. The mind that thought the thought which led to the act that I condemn is now the same mind that thinks the thought that condemns the mind that thought before. Thus, the mind is an aggregate of available thoughts at a given point in time in an ongoing process characterized by constant change. The mind is only a process that performs as useful instrument. It cannot be condemned. Then what can be condemned? Can Atman, the name for first person singular I, be condemned? From the scripture Shruti, I know that Atman illumines the mind. Atman is Satchit Ananda, boundless, timeless, awareness, fullness, form-free and action-free. Being neither the doer nor the enjoyer, neither a karta nor a bhokta, the Atman cannot be blamed. Therefore, what can I condemn? I can condemn just a given thought, neither my body nor my mind nor my Atman. If there is anything that justifiably can be condemned, it is but a given thought born of ignorance and error, a thought that ordered an improper action.
Of all, jealousy is the most illegitimate of the attitudes, because even by the standards of the relative world, it is unreal. Most of the reactive attitudes which are considered asoka are based on either pursuit of the threat, real or imagined, to some objective that is capable of being achieved, at least theoretically. It is not so with jealousy. Jealousy is a reaction of sorrow over lack, which I conclude exists when I compare myself with some other human being who is seen as superior. This supposed superiority, if it exists at all, when examined, would always be found as a partial incomplete. Upon close examination, the one who is jealous would never be able to consider the aggregation of parts and functions that constitute the entity. The object of jealousy, totally superior. If I am jealous, I will never be jealous of all the aspects of another person, nor will anyone who is jealous of me find me totally superior, since the endowments, skill, grace, possessions that inspire my jealousy cannot be separated from the entire entity. And since that entire entity will never be totally an object of my jealousy, there can be no real locus of jealousy for me.
Jealousy has no ground at all, but at the level of the body, mind, sense complex. No one except the Lord himself seems to escape this special pain. For a Jnanin who knows the truth of himself, who therefore does not identify with the body mind assemblage, there is no jealousy. A Jnanin is not jealous because no second person exists. Thus, both the Jnanin who knows himself to be the non-dual Brahman and the Lord who is totality of the apparent, but also knows the truth of himself, no jealousy. In fact, cannot be jealous. For others, jealousy exists and operates endlessly. Seeing themselves as separate entities, they see the world as filled with countless number of other entities that will daily present opportunities, real or fancied, for self-demeaning comparative judgments, following by the pain of Matsarya.
Value 7, Shaucham. So there's two types of cleanliness, Shaucham. Shaucham means inner and also outer cleanliness. So obviously, let's talk about outer or external cleanliness. This is pertaining to your surroundings. So right now you have a room around you and there are flowers hopefully in the room, or maybe not. There are books in a certain arrangements and shelves, and some of them are just right on top of each other, like a, like a dump, a waste dump or something. So, or your kitchen is in a certain fashion, right? So all of these small details, they're important. For example, would you want to meditate in a garage right now? I say, let's go meditate in a dirty garage. You say, is it another place that I can meditate? In other words, that shows us that even a place does, in a very small, indirect way, affect our motivation for participation in our endeavors. So this means that a place can indirectly influence your drive or your sense of motivation, how involved you get with things. So this means you can now start asking, what can I, move around here? What can I spray or make a little bit more, kind of inviting? If you want to like walk into your room, is it inviting? Does it cause you to sit down and just get immersed, totally forget about everything? If not, then there's areas for improvement, because small things like that even the lighting can affect how much immersed and how long you're able to concentrate on a certain topic, therefore get quality work done. So surroundings do, in fact, influence us. By the way, did you ever have this experience of having a sudden impulse of cleaning the house? Everything's normal and then you just want to clean the house. So this is one indicator that, there's some restlessness going on in the mind. And one of the quick fix methods is just go and clean the kitchen, or do some scrubbing and rubbing and vacuum the house. So in other words, this impulse comes from our inner restlessness. It could be, I'm not saying always, but it's a possible indicator. Or some companies which have taken note of the importance of external cleanliness, they actually tell their employees, go and clean the beach. You know why? Go and clean the beach, or go take care of the park, the local park, because this helps the employees organize their inner thoughts, their mind. So in other words, we can use outer activities to organize our inner thoughts. It's a very quick way. This is why sometimes we just want to take a walk in a park alone, or with a dog or someone with us, because it helps us to clear out our mind. Another one is a smart candidate sometimes will say before getting hired, can I see the office space? Can I see the bathroom? You know why? Because the candidate who's about to get hired knows their time will be spent in here for hours at a time, hours at a day. And that's going to affect their state of mind when they come back home. Therefore, before getting hired, they actually say, let me see the arrangement, the general atmosphere of your office, because that's going to influence me. And when I come home, I want to be happy and cheerful so that I can be with my family, right? So there's a correlation there. And that is showing us that these small things that we take for granted do influence. Maybe the kind of clothes, how light do your clothes feel? Do they feel heavy? Do they feel tight? Did it cause you to feel free without too much restriction? Did it feel warm enough? Are you cold all the time? So start asking yourself the question, what are some variables, some modifications that I can make in my room or in my house, or at the entrance of the door, or maybe some incense sticks you can put, or some goddesses or gods, anything that is meaningful, that you connect to, and there's an emotional impact. It touches you emotionally. You can put this and you can add this and make it a real fun, inviting playground that is meaningful and relevant and personal to your own, to your own style. Okay. The other one is the physical body. The physical body, like anything, it's an instrument, like a car, has to be clean for the sake of preserving its nature. So this also comes the importance of exercise, some small exercise like Pilates, or something that keeps you just generally fit, maybe walking in the park, or some jumping, you got these jumping balls. They're quite cool. You just fill up with air and then just jump up and down. So, also ergonomics of how, when you sit down, when you listen, right? Have you tried a different chair? Maybe you try putting cushions on the chair, maybe, straightening your back, or sitting down on a yoga ball and then bouncing a little bit. It makes a huge difference, can bring in energy like that. The second type, which is the internal, and we're going to spend all of our time now at the internal aspect of cleanliness. So why should I focus on internal cleanliness? Because what is the only friend that you have? Your own mind. If this mind feels inadequate, then how will it ever accept completely that it is the whole? All you have is the mind. If that mind feels relatively inadequate, I'm not good enough, how would that very mind accept the vast vision that I am Brahman, I am the whole? Therefore, we have to help out this mind to accept in a much easier fashion the truth, the reality of who you are. So let's start with the question. What makes the mind unclean?
Following a train of thought which is distracting you into a negative environment.
The book also said jealousy, envy, resentment, comparing oneself to another person, fear of tomorrow. Now, I'm not talking about specific situational based fear, for example, or anger. Suppose I see a person, as innocent person, is getting bullied. Of course, I'll get angry. That's natural. So we're not talking about a natural situation specific fear or anger, but rather that fear or anger that is unjustified. It just comes without any reason for it to come, and it sustains itself. Even though everything is okay around you, it's still the person's harboring this sense of past resentment, jealousy, or any kind of distortions. So let's talk about these distortions and how to actually purify them. What else makes the mind impure? As Martin said, always paraphrase it, unaddressed past chatter. These are the hardwired habits that we have accumulated and haven't questioned throughout our lifetimes. And we just let them pass by. We're saying it's not a big deal. Just let it go. It's not a big deal. But every time, every day, they keep on increasing. And then slowly through the course of time, we buy into them and say, it's normal. This is how I am. This is who I am. But in fact, what we're really doing is we're just doing the easy way out, because it's much easier to say, this is who I am, than to actually work on the qualities and look within yourself if there's more space to clear up the dust of the mind. So now the question is, how to clean the mind? How do we clean the mind? This is where the whole Western psychology is really brilliant at this. One method is NLP, neuro-linguistic program. You got Gestalt therapy, you've got EFT, Psyche, so many methods. How to clean the mind? Let's use the template of the book. Step 1, how to clean the mind. Before anything, we need to recognize that indeed this mind may contain dust that has been accumulated through the course of time. No doubt. No one's in exemption from this. And this dust that has been accumulated is affecting you right now. Not tomorrow, right now. Even how you write things down, even how you think about this is being modified, altered through the unconscious behaviors. How seriously you're taking this, also being modified by the unconscious behaviors. How tuned in am I? How relevant do I find this for myself from your standpoint? That's also being modified or compromised by the unconscious behaviors. So let's give you an example of an unhealthy thought. Everyone's here to use me. Now, people are users, so I have to be careful. But is this the truth? Is this the absolute reality? No. Some may use you, but there are also most who are genuine. Some want to be friends with you. That's also a reality. Another example is when Gandhari blamed Krishna for her son's who died after war. And then Krishna replied to Gandhari and said, Gandhari, I understand your point of view. As a mother, you have the right to feel angry and, you miss your sons. Duryodhana has died and your Kauravas, your 100 sons have all died. I understand that. But I am not entirely to blame. Because you, as a mother, have given license to Duryodhana to sin over and over again, and you never stepped in. And now, when your sons are dead, instead of reflecting upon what has happened, you're choosing to blame me. So what is Krishna doing here? This is the ideal way to handle. First of all, Krishna is being sensitive. He's addressing, I understand you're a mother, and the mother has the right to be concerned and angry. So Krishna is sensitive. But at the same time, what is Krishna doing? Applying straightforwardness. He's stating his position. Here's what I think, Gandhari. I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, you're choosing to blame instead of reflect upon what has happened. You yourself gave license to Duryodhana to sin over and over again, and therefore they're now dead. Have you considered that? So this is being both sensitive, addressing the person's concern, but at the same time, firmly stating your fact, being straightforward. What is another example of an unhealthy thought pattern?
I'm slow at doing my work.
In other words, we're first of all recognizing that we do have a chatter in our minds. Everyone has a line or something to say about themselves. I'm not as pretty as I used to be. I'm not as fast as I used to be. I'm not as, I don't remember as much as I used to, or, I'm not as quick as before, or, I'm not as strong as before. I'm not as firm. I'm not as motivated as before. We all have statements like this here and there. So first step one, recognize these statements called the dust of our minds is indeed present. Step one, recognize the dust particles of the mind. Step two, deliberately bringing the opposing thought, which is called pratipaksha bhavana. Prati means re, as in reverse. Pakshaha is a bird. So apply a bird reversal technique. I'm just giving you a direct translation. Prati, reverse, pakshaha, bird, bhavana, state of mind or perception. So you go to a psychologist and say, here's a bird reversal technique. Pakshaha also means view. In other words, reversal of the view. A view reversal. And how to do this? What does this involve? First of all, it involves reflecting upon the validity of your story. What's the real validity of this statement that I am slow in my work, that people are there to use me, that I am not enough? What's the real validity of this story? Is it really true? In reference to what is it true? So if you can first look into the validity of the story, you're changing your attitude towards this, because the attitude towards a certain story is what determines the kinds of actions you follow up on. So the action is nothing but a reflection of the attitude. Attitude is nothing but a reflection of what have I concluded? What conclusion have I made about my story? If it's absolutely true, then all of your actions will reflect that in a form of sabotage. And therefore you will have a self-affirming prophecy by being slow. And then you'll say, see, I'm slow. All because of my original unvalidated narrative that is controlling my actions. So this isn't about controlling actions, because actions don't address the cause, but rather changing the attitude towards the particular stories that you have about your inadequacies. For example, Arjuna listened to Krishna. Krishna said, fight, do your duty. Remember, originally Arjuna didn't want to, but then Arjuna agreed, I'm going to do it. But he doesn't stop there, does it? Because Arjuna could have fought in two attitudes, one of them out of revenge. So he's definitely following Pratipaksha Bhavana, opposite view, but out of bitterness. What's the other attitude? Out of understanding that I'm fighting for protecting Dharma. I am fighting in the name of Dharma. Therefore, it's not good enough just to follow through. With what attitude am I following through? What is my driving force, my reason behind what you are doing? That determines the experience that you have. A joyful one, a bitter one, or a memorable one. It also involves Pratipaksha Bhavana, considering, as the book said, what is the person's biography? Have I looked or considered, or am I including the person's biography? Where do they come from? What kind of a childhood could they have had? What is the person's biography behind their words and actions? Have I included that into my equation before judging them? For example, if I was exposed to this kind of person's background, I probably would have done and acted exactly the same. That's just the reality. Because often we just judge someone and say, what an XYZ. But if you were born in the same environment, with the same friends, with the same circumstances, you probably would have acted the same. There's one story of a client. It's not my own client, but someone that I know. They had a client, and the client said, nobody's there for me. And so every time someone close came to her, some romantic partnership or friendship, she pushed them away. And she says, nobody is there for me. Now, what would we already done? Most cases, we would have taken it personally. Oh, she's pushing me away. What a XYZ person. Well, we label them. But upon investigation, what was the cause for her pushing people away? The cause was, if you get to know the person, the story was, when she was young, her parents were busy and they were offloading her to the caretakers. So she could hardly spend time with her parents. And so she's associated, those who I love the most are the ones who are not supposed to be near me. Those who I love the most are not supposed to be around me. That's her association as a child. Therefore, what does she do as a grown-up? As soon as she got close to someone, what happened in the mind? Those who I love most are not supposed to be around me. Therefore, I push them away. Association. Now, suppose you didn't include this kind of possibility. What do? We brush them off. We say, God, no, you're hopeless. But look at the story of the person. There's always a reason behind it. So whenever she got close to someone, she pushed them away. And then what does she do? She justifies. Because I'm an independent woman, I'm self-sufficient. So this is how we go about our things. We say statements and then we justify. We say, yeah, I'm just a strong individual. But there's a story behind that. So step one, investigate the story. Step two, apply Pratipaksha Bhavana. That means a thought that is reverse, bird reversal. How about if you were in a position of a rebellious troublemaker? How do we often see them? Oh, what a troublemaker, right? We kind of give them some name, but let's look into that. What if that person who is a rebellious troublemaker, as we define them, what if they were, as a child, one of the parents who they saw as God authority? This is how we are as kids. We see our parents as gods. And what if that parent slapped them several times and they developed fear towards their mom or dad? Now, what happens in adulthood? We fear authority, like the police. Therefore, we become rebellious. That could be a possibility. Again, you do not know the story of the person. Therefore, where is the logic of defining them or putting them into boxes? Consider the person's biography. That is how we can be more accommodative towards another individual. Another example, they could have been cheated in the past by someone unfairly. Therefore, towards you right now, they are expressing an intolerant attitude. That could be a possibility. Therefore, Pratipaksha Bhavana is considering different possibilities. Another possibility is, this is their issue. It's not mine. I choose not to get enmeshed in it. It's not my responsibility. It's not my job description to fix other people. As a baby, hey, let me look at my job description. Fix people in life. Did we all get that? No. So it's not my job description to fix other people. Another Pratipaksha Bhavana example is understanding that everyone's program is benign. Everyone's born with dharma. As the book said, even a criminal, as we define them. And through the course of time, that program gets obscured through circumstances that are totally out of their control. If you were in their position, you would probably also act like them. Therefore, we can be more accommodating by applying Pratipaksha Bhavana instead of more judgmental, which is often a reaction that we have. What else does Pratipaksha Bhavana involve? It involves being specific, asking yourself, what exactly am I condemning? Do I even know? There's two options. You can either be condemning yourself or someone else. Let's talk about condemning yourself. What does self-condemnation mean? As the book spoke about, it means self-criticism. You are having pity upon yourself. That means you're criticizing your own talents, your own self as an individual. That's himsa onto thyself. So if you're condemning yourself, in one word, you can quote that as, I am not loved enough. That's self-condemnation. I am not loved enough. Then the question is, which part specifically are you condemning? Let me give you some examples of self-condemnation before considering which parts we may be condemning. Example of self-condemnation. I should be more or less fill in the blank. What is this? This is comparison to a mental construct. In other words, you take your relative self that is present right now, and I compare this person to some mental construct that I have. According to that mental construct, I say, I should be more like that or less like that. Self-condemnation. I can't remember. I'm not good at remembering. I'm not witty enough, right? Not as I used to be. These are all lines that we give to ourselves. Not as pretty as I used to be. I wasted my time on ineffective spiritual teachings in the past. Really? In other words, you're condemning your past self because of whom you're now arrived to this new teaching. Have you really wasted your time? You would have not been here unless you went through that. I don't fit here. I don't fit in this class. That's another self-condemning statement. According to whom? According to me. So these are all statements that we lower our own worth with these one-liners. Now let's get into the specifics. My question was, what specifically are you condemning in reference to yourself? Is it the limbs? Which arm are you condemning? Which knuckle? Which ear are you condemning? Right? What part of the Annamaya kosha is being condemned? It can't be the limbs because the limbs are inert. They don't have the mind of their own. Is it the mind? It can't be the mind because the mind is nothing but a collection of random thoughts. The mind fluctuates according to the thoughts. Is it the thoughts? Well, not really, because the thought itself is made up of parts. Many parts make up a thought. Which part specifically are you now condemning? Is it the ear of that person in that image, that mental construct? Is it their nose? Is it which vowel did they say that you're condemning? Suppose someone said something to you and you're condemning that. Which vowel am I saying? Is it the consonants that I'm condemning or the vowels that I'm condemning? Can't be the thoughts either because they're made up of parts. Is it Atma? Can't be Atma. Just like the light is just illumining the hall with people. If a fight takes place in the hall, light is just chilling out, illumining the whole fight, making the fight possible. If celebrations is going on, the light is also illumining the celebration. Atma has nothing to do with it. Can't condemn Atma. Is it parents? Are you condemning parents? Can't do that because they too are a product of many causes. Are you condemning ignorance? Ignorance is universal. Everyone's under the spell of ignorance. At the same time, if you didn't have ignorance, you would be constantly distracted by unnecessary details. Imagine right now listening and knowing about all of the murders that are going on this second. Imagine being concerned and having that in front of you right now. The screaming and the torture, some genuine person right now is asking for help. Someone's mugging me, help. Some child is being now taken by some mugger in a taxi. Right now, imagine knowing about all of that. So therefore, you cannot condemn ignorance because it also serves a purpose, preventing you from knowing details that will constantly distract us. So what's the only thing that we can condemn? The action itself. That's it. And once you condemn the action, then you say, how can I do this differently next time? The independent, the very small action in that moment, the word, that one word, that's all you can condemn. And then next, you follow it up and you say, how can I do this differently next time? Therefore, what am I showing? By analyzing what exactly is it that we're condemning, we realize how nonsensical our tendency to generalize our self-condemnation really is. Because we just say, I'm not good enough. What specifically is not good enough? Show me. So this means we have to go from generalities into specifics. So that was condemning yourself. What about condemning others? Condemning others means putting them into boxes, right? Small box and you write a label on there. People that are filling the blanks. That's condemning others. Suppose you call someone a liar. Classic example, right? Is there a better way to do this than calling someone else a liar? Of course there is. Because to call someone else a liar and just brush them off into this liar box, what is that doing to your own state of mind? It's diffusing your clarity, your rationale, your thinking capacity. It's lowering your humanness. So instead of just brushing someone off and saying, what a liar, like, you see a politician or someone, I'm not saying all of them are, but someone that gives that impression. Instead of saying that, rather, you can say, yes, this individual has stated incorrect facts about certain reality. They may think it's true. They may have also been influenced by their past that's causing them to find this normal. They may be trying to protect their self-interest, trying to gain an unfair advantage. That may also be true. In other words, you're going into the specifics rather than just brushing the person off as liar, full stop. It's very easy to generalize, much harder to be specific, but it's specifics that improve, that evolve your mind. It's generalities that lower our thinking, black or white. If you think about Lord Krishna, he himself was hated by so many people, the Lord himself, because they're generalizing. So what to say about an ordinary individual, right? Even the Lord is hated by the Duryodanas and the Kauravas. The Krishna go, how dare you insult the Lord, the one that's keeping you alive right now, making it possible for you to insult. How dare you? Did Krishna do that? No. He still dealt with the person who insulted the Lord of the universe like a human being. Let me negotiate with you, Duryodhana. Let me give you 5 chances. So this is a symbol of someone that is firm in their pratipaksha bhavana, applying the opposite and using your creative skills to provide an opposite standpoint than the one that we are so accustomed to, which is so much easier to state. Finally, let's apply a revision of inner purity. This is application mode now. So having listened now, you're asking, tell us the formula to apply this. Step 1, acknowledge the dust of the mind. In other words, catch yourself when there's a one-liner coming out and write it down immediately. Catch yourself and write it down when it comes. And get clear on the consequences if I don't address it. Because unless we get clear, unless I if I think there's no reason for me to work upon this, you're not going to work upon this. So get clear on the consequences if I don't address it. Step 1. Step 2, deliberately apply the opposite standpoint. Bird reversal. How? 2 ways. 1, investigate into the story that's coming out. Investigate into it. Look at the cause. And 2, get specific. What specifically is being judged or labeled here? Get really, really specific. And then next week, how to apply Shaucham to real life emotions like envy, happiness, because even happiness itself can be distorted by impure mind. So I will show you next week 3 levels of happiness. Some people get happy by or through other people's miseries. Other people get happy in a different way. So we have to talk about how exactly we get happy. What makes us happy? Because that reveals how evolved you are. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.